Hey, thanks for tuning into the ReMinders podcast. Off the bat, give one of my favorite reminders to bring some awareness to the fact that we're breathing, and that conscious breathing feels really good. So why not bring some consciousness to that subconscious activity? This is one of the ways that we can bridge the two brain states of consciousness, of our thinking and our attention, our conscious attention, our conscious awareness, with the subconscious programming that is honestly running the show. Just a little reminder there. And in that vein, a reminder that mindfulness feels really good too. So not just being aware of our breathing, but also being aware of our full body felt sense, This is something one of my mentors taught me, just rolling boogies. So those listening and not watching the video, just rolling my index finger across my thumbprint. And it's just a really easy tactile activity that can bring me back into my body and back into mindfulness in that way. So I've got Jeremy, my good buddy, good friend from life. I've known him since high school. I said from life because good friend from life. I don't think of him as just a friend from high school. That's why I said he's a good friend from life. But yeah, we met in high school, and we weren't really necessarily close friends in high school. We really didn't hang out until college, when I would come back from Chicago and see some of my homies, and he was in some of those friend circles, and yeah, we've just gotten closer throughout the years. So he was over, and we had tentative plans to maybe make a podcast, and my energy was kind of low that day, so decided we would still record it and just see what happens. But it's a little loosey-goosey. We were kicking back some drinks and whatnot, so honestly, my energy in it was pretty low, and I would say not as engaged. I wasn't as engaged or interesting as I would have liked, looking back and listening back. So I'm going to take a different approach with this one, and I'm going to do some pop-in edits throughout the conversation and add some extra comments. And Jeremy and I are talking about doing something similar for, did I already mention it was like 4 hours that we recorded. There was no video that was recorded, unfortunately, or honestly probably fortunate for me in hindsight, because that would have been a lot to edit all of the video as well as the audio. So we're talking about using some of the vignette topics, as Jeremy put it. He said we had some nice vignette topics that were present throughout the first 3 hours. So what you're going to hear in this episode is the last 40 minutes or so, and I'm going to pop in and make some extra comments. So here we go.
Dude, when they started doing these short reel things, they fucked me up, man. They fucked me up.
So you're on the reels, or on the shorts.
I don't, I tried to stay away from them, but I started a little bit, and then you could just keep swiping.
It's a very addictive algorithm.
It's I need to cut it back, because I get in a hole. I will literally get in a hole, and it's damn, an hour has gone by, and I've just been...
Yeah, we all been there.
Not good. It's not like it's bad content.
No.
There's a couple that I watched that... This guy's name is Jimmy something. I forget. But he's generated this really large following, and they kind of crowdsource him, and what he does is he goes up to people who are homeless and asks them if there's anything that they need that he could get for them right now. And then they're usually modest and try not to ask for much. And he's like, no, what can I do for you to make your life better right now?
That's cool.
And a lot of time, he always has these backpacks that have tents and sleeping bags and stuff in it to give them. But then usually he'll go and get them pairs of 3 pairs of clothes and a new pair of shoes, and then get them some food and maybe a propane stove, and get them stuff that they can at least be more self-sufficient and stuff.
That's really cool.
and he's gotten to this point where he's helped these people actually like get out of poverty and get back to be able to like be self-sustaining, or at least they're in maybe like a halfway house. They're getting back to having employment, getting their identification back, and like, because some of these people, like, you know, they fell into drugs and hard times, and I mean basically don't have any resources anymore. So like the journey of getting back is so hard because they don't have an ID, they don't have the stuff to get their ID. So then they can't get work because they don't have identification. They can't get money. They can't get a place to live. They can't do anything because they don't have these more basic things. So, but he's helped people like get out from that. And like, there's a part of it that I'm like, well, I don't like the fact a little bit that he's kind of like, maybe, is it some sort of exploitation by filming it all? But it seems like he's generally doing like, very
there's
positive
always
things.
there's angles to it, but I mean either way, this is what I call the function of belief. So it's like whether you're right or wrong in your belief, the function of you believing a certain thing, he believes that this is something worth doing. You know what I mean? That there's
and
value
in it.
That
like,
he's,
people are getting something out.
Exactly, it's altruistic in that way. But it's like there's a positive function.
I mean, I wouldn't want it to be like utilitarian though, like where it's like, well, I mean, it benefits the greater good kind of mentality.
Benefits the greater good and benefits him. Benefits his ego.
Well, yeah, but like, I mean,
and his spirit.
Yeah. You know? Well, I mean, like to a certain extent, like if you just follow the like, well, it's for the greater good, that can be a slippery slope. I mean, they used to do human sacrifice in some communities because they thought it was for the greater good. They thought that it was, you know, we do this and it's going to get us fruitful crop yields or whatever.
So it sounds like Jeremy is representing the idea of, I don't want to put words in his mouth, so I guess we'll have to maybe approach this topic when we speak again on the podcast. But it's just making me think of the rugged individualist type of programming that's pretty prevalent in our culture. You know, you'll hear this type of stuff in opposition to socialist ideas or policy proposals, stuff like that. The idea that essentially morality can be skewed once we prioritize the collective over the individual. Which I agree, that is definitely a slippery slope and can absolutely be a reality. We've seen it many times. The ironic thing is that I think that we're also being duped by this idea of being too far in the extreme of individualism, because when we only prioritize the individual, while yes, the collective is made up of individuals, do we want a collective made up of narcissistic individuals that are only thinking about themselves and their own immediate desires and needs? Well, we're in a system and community and culture pretty akin to that, and we see how that's working out for us. In the sense of the very mundane examples of driving on the road and having the disposition that everyone should be yielding to you. And, we're just walking down the street and holding this stranger danger programming of, instead of seeing people and smiling and waving, we all, not we all, but the mainstream approach these days is to just keep to yourself, not look at people, to assume the worst in people, stuff like that. And, it's just not a very fun or fulfilling way to be engaging with each other and the planet. I mean, I'll put it this way. Every day that we continue to invest in non-renewable resources, we're prioritizing the profits of very few individuals, and we're prioritizing our addiction to comfort and to status quo rather than acknowledging the health of the collective, which is to say the world, which is to say the earth itself, by engaging in energy exchanges that are more harmonious with each other and harmonious with the cosmos, may I say. And, And it's so sad that me even saying that puts the feeling and thought in my body that, oh, this is going to be, trigger the thoughts in some people of, oh, that's lefty agenda, type of nonsense. And that it's become politicized in that way. And again, keeping us in these small camps of division. And so my whole point is that there is truth in the Venn diagram of the two extremes, the points that they meet and become one. And in my understanding, that is the way to bring those two extremes together of individualism versus collectivism, is through the understanding and felt sense experience that the individual is the collective is the individual, that we are unified, and not just some airy-fairy way, but in a molecular, atomic way, in a visceral way, that we are the universe experiencing itself. I mean, there's no denying that. We're not visitors to this time and space. We're not individual entities on vacation in the cosmos. We are the cosmos. And I think we're coming to terms with that in the way that we naturally are. So, and we get into that conversation a little bit more later on.
When I was at UC, I took a human geography class. Talks about kind of like population densities, and then like different like cultural aspects to population growth and things of that nature. But it was talking about, so like when you think about a population growth, a lot of people might think it's linear, like it's like this straight line graph that like kind of goes up at an angle, but it's actually a series of almost exponential growth. So it'll like come up and then goes almost straight up and then plateaus.
Okay.
And then it's happened multiple times in our history. So like it'll go like this and then plateau and then go like this and then plateau. So like the first one would have been like when they developed agriculture. So they develop agriculture, they have a surplus of food, more life can be sustained. But they get to a certain point where it can only hold so much, and then it starts flattening out. But then some other kind of innovation happens.
Revolution.
I'm sure there's like one in between there, but another one that they talk about is like penicillin and like medical technology. So like you have these people that would, all these things that people would normally die from, they're not dying from it anymore. Population grows because there's more people that can now reproduce, and people are living longer. So boom, goes up again, and then it's going to plateau again, and then just like we hit a roadblock, and then we figure out human ingenuity is pretty crazy, and it's not like they're working towards solving this problem like, oh, we can't hold more people or we need more people. It's just like, well, there's an issue, people find a way to address said problem, and then more people. And what I was relating that to was like technology is the same way. Like, and what I was getting at is like we were at kind of like maybe not a plateau, or maybe we were at the beginning of like this, like the exponential growth. Like they developed computers, and then like it's.
And then you have to hit that next revolution.
Like, what's the next plateau, or what's the next?
Yeah, and that's what the singularity is. When we're just in that, we're not stopping off at the plateau. We're like in that moment of unifying creation and creator. You know what I mean? Creating and creation.
Did you know they dropped a new season of Black Mirror? Have you watched?
I don't fuck with Black Mirror.
Oh, you don't?
No,
okay.
Not for real. Like, I've seen episodes. Like, I'm a fan of, like, the Junipero and
especially
stuff.
Since you don't watch it, I won't feel like I'm ruining it for you.
Go for it. Okay, here's your official spoiler warning if you're intending on watching that episode of Black Mirror. Jeremy does give away the plot. Also wanted to expand on why I don't particularly watch that show. Kara and I actually did end up watching that particular episode last night because I was telling her about it and she was interested. And, I don't know. I enjoyed it to a degree. I think there is some value in in these stories, but the reason why I shy away from watching Black Mirror regularly or watching all the episodes, Kara's brother showed us the big episodes from the first couple seasons. That was our introduction years ago when we were on vacation. And they're kind of freaky, kind of spooky. A couple months later, I watched San Junipero. That episode is pretty great. I don't know. I just have an aversion towards stories that feel like they're seeds of paranoia. And especially if I don't feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. This particular episode, there's some takeaways. In a certain sense, it was kind of a call to be your best self. But it also definitely had that classic paranoia that Black Mirror is so well known for. And I guess that's what's mesmerizing about it, which is, I don't know, to me it just feels a little sick. But no judges for anyone that's into that show or that type of film and stories, different strokes. I just find that all content and all experiences are informing our expectations and our imaginations in a certain sense, and I don't want to be feeding my mind with dystopian type of stories,
The newest season, the first episode is about this lady. The episode opens up and she's working and she has to fire somebody. She fires this person. They make a bit of a scene and then she goes home. And when she goes home, she sits down to watch Netflix with her boyfriend. And when they're scrolling through Netflix, they find this show that's named her name, and it looks like her in the picture. But it's not her, it's Selma Hayek playing her. So they start watching it, and the episode starts being her day that just happened. And she's being unfaithful, so there's little bits of her texting with another person that gets found out and this and that. But when it gets deep down into it, it's this layered thing of AI and Netflix is now using AI to write shows. And in writing a show, they wrote a show that was basically like this mundane person's life. And within that show, the show is them finding Netflix and seeing that their life is a show. So it's this spiraling thing where it's a show within a show within a show within a show. And what we were watching was actually just this one lady and one of the layers of the show.
That is wild.
So, you had the base one person, they live a regular life. AI ends up writing a show about them, and it's on Netflix. They go home, see themselves on that show. But inside that show is another person that's acting as that person. It's just layer upon layer of... It's a fractal.
It's a fractal. Whoa.
Yeah. But it was just an interesting,
No, yeah.
just idea that, oh shit, they're just going to be using a computer to write stories.
It's already happening,
Yeah,
right?
it's already happening.
It's not wild. Have I talked to you about Detroit Become Human?
I've played it.
Have you played it?
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
It's been a while, so I don't know if I fully remember the whole story other than, I know he's an android.
Yeah, you play as 3 different androids, right?
Yeah. You're an android that's solving a crime.
Yeah.
Is it kind of like a Blade Runner situation?
I read that book, but I didn't see the movie.
Well, I mean, it's basically a android that hunts down malfunctioning androids.
That's right.
That aren't operating
right. Wow,
within.
I never even thought about that. Yeah,
they're just not. Sort of it's kind of like iRobot or most any artificial intelligent based.
Yeah. So anyway, the reason why I bring it up, the trope.
Yeah.
The reason why I bring up the android trope is that was a really great story for real.
Yeah,
because it takes it to the level of just so if we're creating consciousness, is it not still consciousness?
Yeah. What is? Yeah.
And that's why I don't even really mess with the term AI, artificial intelligence. Intelligence is intelligence.
Yeah.
I know what you mean by AI.
I would just
obviously.
I just would be let's just not fuck with that. like, I don't know, you watch all the tropes. I'm like, well, then why are we trying to go down this path if this is what we think is the end all be all?
Because like, there's no stopping that avalanche. We can't stop on the plateau and go back.
I know. It's, you open Pandora's box.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what consciousness does. That's what intelligence does. That's what you're describing. Yeah. You reach the revolution, you get to a certain plateau. Like, that's what we're doing. That's what the social media addiction is. We've reached a plateau in our revolution of being able to have such technology. Like, think of how we could reroute that and reprogram that into being like that deep in the domain of forward motion for the species and planet, and not just,
stasis. I would say
stasis, yeah,
because it's not like it's necessarily going back. Because to be going back, we would have had to have been there before.
We're learning, right?
Yeah. We're learning things. Well, it's like, hey, Thomas Edison figured out 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Yeah, exactly.
And then one way too.
It's infotainment.
Yeah,
and I mean, I think the cool part of it is that it does illuminate how. I mean, what do you believe, dude? Like, literally, deep fake and, like, all this stuff. Like, all stories are a possible timeline,
Oh, yeah.
Fake and, fact and fiction, really. Because they're one and the same. Is what you kind of just described with that, like, Black Mirror loop.
Yeah.
Or fractal. As you put it,
Because it doesn't all come together, because it just keeps going.
Yeah, it keeps going in some direction, Yeah.
I don't know.
That's what life is. You just catch a wave. You know what I mean? That's what our karma is. It's like, what type of wave are we catching? Karma literally just means action. Like, what action?
And maybe where on that wave are you riding? Are you at the top of it, or are you at the bottom of it? Or are you gonna get crashed?
Yeah, right. Or the crest of ascension. I don't know. Is there any eternal ascension,
or is it all just? I don't know. I kind of like
this cycle of crashing and cresting.
I kind of always like the notion that, like, the oneness, right? We're all, like, connected in some way. Like, have you ever heard the idea where it's like, oh, we're all actually just one consciousness, but we're just being kind of like, we're all going through these different simulations of consciousness, but it's kind of just like one being that's learning from all of its experiences.
We're like hairs on an arm, that's what an ego is one hair on an army of hairs on an arm. Like, we're a part of this, like, deeper being. This is just like a temporary dream that, like, rises up and then it crests and then it comes back down to the ocean, you know what I mean? To rejoin the ground of being.
Well, there's like a fun little, like, short story that I read once where it was more or less like somebody dies, and they describe through this, like, they go through the white light and then they come to talk to God, and God tells them that, like, literally they're going through, like, a training. They're, like, achieving some kind of different level of consciousness, or just, like, understanding. And to gain this understanding, they're going through all these, like, human life experiences, and through every human life, and achieving a different perspective through all this, like, and it's just like every time you die and you come to here and you have this conversation with, it was almost like a dad being or something like that, and we're just, like, me and you are that same person, and we're each gonna eventually die and go back, and we'll have more or less the same conversation, and we're just trying to achieve this greater understanding.
I like that.
Through all this experience.
Yeah, I like that as a metaphor for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a nice, like, I think it's just a good way to be able to look at life, and, like, I mean, it's just like looking at someone else and being able to see yourself
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Did you ever watch the show The OA? Wow, what a bad segue on my part. Jeremy set me up with a perfect opportunity to talk about some heady, not even heady, hearty recognition of self and other people, and I responded to it with, "Have you ever seen The LA?" Have I talked to you about the one show that I talk to everyone about all the time? Anyway, so that I don't even know why I brought that up, to be quite honest, and we didn't get too deep into it. But yeah, what can I even say about it? Really, I think he's bringing up like the crux of the biscuit for all of these reminders is to reach that recognition of self in other, and that's obviously not an easy thing for us to remember throughout our day, especially when people are acting a fool or we find ourselves clowning. We get wrapped up in the whirlwind of thought programs, of ego, and of wanting to protect our individual self through those ego stories, and we get wrapped up in the emotions of, again, trying to stay safe, trying to stay in comfort and in equilibrium, things like that. But yeah, when we can see another person, remember that we are two aspects of a unified being, whether you call that consciousness or the universe or two characters in the simulation, or you call that God experiencing itself, different metaphors for essentially the same thing. I think when we can do that and our behaviors and actions are in alignment with that, again, it goes back to the individual versus the collective. Like when we realize that those two things are unified, we naturally would act a certain way, or we would naturally let go of certain self-sabotaging behaviors or greedy behaviors, things like that. And, I think that's just the trajectory of being human, is the journey of forgetting that and the journey of remembering that. I think that's a big difference between, like, the atheist or the agnostic versus the religious, is, like, eliminating the element of...
absolute? Or
I was going to say personal, like to the religious folks, like, they have a personal God. It's personal, And to the atheist or the agnostic, it's kind of a more neutralized, it is what it is type
of thing. What do you mean by
personal? Like, the universe doesn't care. Like, it's not a person. It doesn't care about our feelings. It's not a mom or a dad. It's just, it's an algorithm. Yeah. It doesn't care about the charge. It just gives us what we show that we put our attention into, just like an algorithm. That's how life works. If we keep telling ourselves that we're a piece of shit, like, we're going to get evidence for that. Mm-hmm. I think that can be shown on a scientific level, like we were talking about earlier, but definitely on a personal level. And we all experience that. You know what I mean? Like we were talking about earlier, whatever energy we're resonating at, we're going to be experiencing the resonant reflections of that experience, of that vibration, of that frequency.
People pick up what you're putting out and usually return the favor.
Yeah, on a subconscious level, like a deep subconscious level. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, not necessarily consciously, yeah. But yeah, we're all reflecting each other. Yeah. For sure. So,
not that you shouldn't have, like I get, like, it's good to have a range, or like you can't be one way all the time, but like for me, like in a work, in my like work situations, like remaining positive makes all the difference so much, because it'll be like, when something goes wrong, even though something went wrong, if you can just be like, well, I mean, we're gonna fix this, like, it's
solution,
fine. Like, it's not like, this is not the end of the world. It's all right.
Solution minded rather than problem minded.
Yeah, like, all right, it's fine. Like, let's figure out how we're gonna make this right, instead of worrying about the fact that something bad happened. Like,
especially in a work environment. All right, we're getting paid to figure this out.
Yeah.
What are you gonna fucking get?
Well, and like getting bent out of shape about it doesn't solve anything.
Exactly.
I mean, I really I like saying it, but like let go and let God. Like,
yeah.
And like, it doesn't have to mean. You know what I mean? Like, just
I know what you mean, yeah.
It's just like you got to go with the flow kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's sometimes bad things happen, but if you dwell on it too much, like, what are we doing now though? Like,
right.
Got to move forward. If you get too stuck on it, it's gonna eat you up.
Yeah, it's just like letting go of the control of the flow and just surrendering to its natural. But I feel like there is a way of like facilitating the flow or choosing which flow we're going to let go into. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we are tuning into a certain experience, but ultimately like letting go of like the process of getting there or the seeking for that matter, like just being fully arrived in the moment that we're currently in, rather than like, you know, we all have our stories of how the moment could be better or our lives could be better, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What we're striving towards. And you could argue that that's really necessary to keep us motivated and keep us active, you know, in a certain way. That's the function of ego, right? To protect itself and also to build itself up.
Yeah.
This self-preservation identity, attachment to a certain identity. Yeah. Whether it's an overinflated identity or an underinflated identity, you know.
Sometimes I don't understand when people can just be so negative all the time. Because to me, it just takes so much more energy to be negative. And I'm like, you must be exhausted just all the time. Like, because you use all this energy to just be mad about something. Like,
I mean, yeah. Or the depression, like the lack of being mad or the lack of allowing yourself to be sad and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes energy to maintain that posture in a sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When Jeremy brought that up, I honestly took it a little personally, not in the sense of a personal jab from him, but I was just sort of reminded that I can be that person sometimes. And, you know, that person that's holding on to negativity or recycling and regurgitating these, like, negative self-stories. And to his point, how literally exhausting it is, you know, to do that. And, yeah, I mean, I think it's just we all have our personal shadow that we're either ignoring and keeping in the shadow, keeping in the unconsciousness, or we're on the journey. And or, I mean, I think we're all on the journey of self-discovery in that way, in some sense. That journey of bringing consciousness to those patterns and to that shadow and bringing it out of the shadow. It's like Jeremy said earlier in the episode, you know, when we shine light onto something, you know, it wouldn't be dark, it wouldn't be shadow if we were shining some light on it. The light of awareness. So the flip side of that being a very constant reminder to myself to remember to reach out to people when I'm in a loop and to break those loops and to break out of that stagnation, and how rejuvenating it can be to have conversations of just speaking your truth. You know, literally yesterday I had I was blessed. I guess it's Leo season has arrived. I had two, you know, really great conversations with two different friends yesterday of similar nature, where it's just, you know, getting stuff off the chest and being able to speak freely about, you know, the thoughts and the programs and the patterns that will cycle and loop until we either break the loop or allow it to come to its natural conclusion. I
was talking with my older brother when he was in town recently, and I mean, while we were, you know, raising up a Catholic family, neither of us like, you know, go to church anymore or anything like that. And he was just talking about how, like, he may not have really agreed with like much of anything that Catholicism had to
spout
out, but he does enjoy, what's the prayer? It's Lord, help me to accept the things I can't change. It's serenity prayer.
Yeah. Well, I wish I'd just let him say the whole prayer. But for those that haven't heard it, or a reminder, it's always a good one. The serenity prayer is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Apparently it actually goes on from there, but that's the potent part.
I think it's like that one is like something like that always, stuck with me. And I said, I just agreed wholeheartedly, because that's something that I think about all the time, especially like at work or just like some stressful situations. You have to understand that there's some things that it wasn't in your control.
Yeah.
So
that one's,
let it go.
That's a great one.
The things that you could control, you have to understand that you need to learn from it.
Strength to do what you can, and let go of what you can't.
Yeah.
Compassion.
And change if necessary.
Right.
Have the capacity to change.
Yeah. The compassion for the past and the capacity to change for the better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think like that, like all those things right there could make, if people tried to adhere to that kind of mindset, it could change a lot of things.
Definitely. Yeah. Serenity prayer. I mean, I feel like part of the reason why it has so much power is that, the 12-step program has taken that as a slogan for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So it has that extra positive weight or energy or uplift to it. That it's worked for a lot of people,
Yeah.
It's an anchor for making the shifts that we were talking about, though. We were talking about like reaching those plateaus and needing a revolution.
Mm-hmm.
That can be a revolution of thought, is to surrender.
Yeah.
And to what you can and cannot do.
Yeah.
It's definitely something to remember.
I think something that could easily get tied into that in a way is like, don't become nihilistic because of that, though. Or kind of like saying, if you feel like you can't affect something, that's not necessarily always a good reason not to do something.
Yeah.
Because it can feel overwhelming. Yeah. So maybe not.
It requires self-honesty.
Don't try to so like, I was watching something today that was just talking about always making small tasks, like making small goals.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so the National Parks After Dark. I was listening to that on my way here, and it was about this guy who got mauled by a bear, and he had to hike like 18 miles after getting mauled to get to his car, and then drive 20 minutes to get to this resort, and then call an ambulance and get air carried to Ottawa, and then drive for another hour in an ambulance to get to the hospital. And it took him 12 hours from when he got attacked to all the way to when he finally got to the hospital.
Wow.
And one of the things that he said that helped him go was making small goals. Like, it wasn't, I got to get to my car. It was, I got to get to that rock over there.
Wow.
And then after he got to that rock, he had to go get to that tree and slowly make these progressions, because he was like, if I'd tried to get to the car from the beginning, I never would have made it there.
It would have been insurmountable.
Yeah.
Overwhelming.
So it's like, don't try to tackle all the world's problems, but try to affect what you can in front of you.
Yeah.
Because you can.
That's what you can do.
You can actually affect, like.
It's more achievable. Because you have to make that step first.
I always leave the coffee table dirty. Like, let's start with keeping the coffee table in order. And once we get that under control, then we can work on keeping the whole room tidy.
Right.
Versus, man, the whole house is a mess, I gotta clean everything. Well, let's just work on the beginning.
Right.
And then once we get that under control, then we can do more.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that reminds me of something that I've been thinking about a lot. My friend Amanda told me, it's like when you're feeling overwhelmed, just like pick one thing. Just do one thing. Mm-hmm. Literally exactly what you're saying. Like the step that we're on currently, not the whole dance. You don't have to figure out the whole dance of eternity right now.
So, like, there's some studies that they've done on like people in our generation having this depression related to like climate catastrophe, and people feeling very useless to that solution because of how overwhelming it feels. And I feel like it's kind of in this breath, like if you try and look at it from, well, just affect the things that you can change versus kind of viewing it like if everybody does that, it makes a large impact because everybody's doing it compared to everybody doing 0%. If everybody did 1%, well, that's like a whole lot more being done than what was being done before.
Totally. Especially if we remember that, like, we do have that ability to affect reality in such a profound way, you know? Imagine we all got on the same notion that we were all like, oh, we're in the same dream together.
I mean, the world got shut down not too long ago. Everybody, like, not that necessarily everybody was, like, completely on board with it, but, like, it happened.
What's crazy
was
about
it government mandated? Maybe, but, like, you know...
But
it happened.
The function of it is that the Earth did have a fresh air for a minute.
Yeah,
you know,
in
like,
India they saw fucking Mount Everest for the first time in like 100 years or something.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And we only shut down for what? At that time it was what, a month?
It was like a month, 30 days.
Yeah.
And I think there was some
Imagine
other
what
like
a year would do. Imagine
stuff about like Beijing too. Like,
yeah, there was
like in
there was
China they have a
over,
really big smog.
Yeah.
But like
I think the water's cleared in certain areas, stuff like that. Yeah. A month, dude. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I feel like we need to like consciously choose to do something on that type of scale so that it doesn't happen to us. You know what I mean? It's like I want to see humans wise up and not have to wait for the big spanking or the big
like something bad like
the catastrophe.
It's like one of them things where it's like, yeah, like I've been told this all my life, but I didn't really like heed the warning, and then had to experience it myself to make a choice to not do that.
Right, that type of thing.
No, so it's funny though. Like it kind of ties back into like music in general and how like maybe you don't like the energy. Like it has power. There's lots of power in music. Maybe like what I was saying earlier, that like it's there's a hypnotizing kind of aspect to it, like the melody and
entrainment.
And then people put message to music. There's been multiple times where they've tried to have like almost like global concerts. Like they've tried to, in a way, like raise a consciousness through music that spans the globe. Because like there was a concert, I forget what it was, but they did one. And maybe it was like a Live Aid. I don't remember, but it was in the early 2000s. And I remember I watched some of it because I thought it was just
really? I don't know anything about this.
Like I wanted to watch, like I think Red Hot Chili Peppers performed at some point during it. But there was, concerts going on in England and, the East Coast of the United States, the West Coast of the United States, over in like Europe and everywhere. So there was concerts going on for 24 hours and it was all they were all connected.
But it was like that was still just like musicians coming together for an event that was about a certain thing, but it not necessarily that their music was a reflection of it.
For sure.
It wasn't in that entrainment.
For sure. The music didn't necessarily have the message that they were trying to send.
That's the message that carries. Is when it gets into our subconsciousness.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
I mean, that really is like my intention with music, is to create like positive programming, or entrainment, however you want to say it, or brainwashing in a positive way.
Have you heard about how like
my brain could use a wash?
Have you heard about how like TikTok in China has like much more like strict content base than what it is like in America?
Right.
They like have, I think for like younger people, the content is all like positive, inspiring, science, like educational stuff like that compared to like what we get more is just like dopamine content.
Yeah.
So we live, in a country that has its freedoms and everything. If given the choice, do people inherently choose the dopamine over the educational, and that's the problem, and we just don't legislate the fact that we should just focus on this? So we're just like, well, we'll just let it go, and this is just what people choose. It's what sells. That's what makes the money. So if they wanted educational stuff, they'd watch it.
You nailed it. That's what sells. That's our god in America.
Because it's like you said, pushing that button is the most pleasurable thing to do. So
it's almost like any like resistance or shining light on that is like now considered woke. You know what I mean? And now we can just demonize this whole thing by calling it woke. Almost to the extent of like one of the only conspiracies that I really believe is or could imagine is the idea that like I could see the government pumping a bunch of like wild conspiracies out into the narrative.
To dilute it all?
Just to dilute it, you know what I mean?
For sure, dude. Yeah. There's like if you go into the alien branch of conspiracy theory, there's this guy named Dr. Stephen Greer. He has some cred, apparently. I don't know. He's talked about all these stories where he would have to like debrief presidents on like alien related things. But what he's gone so far to say in some of his stuff is that anything that we see today that's like an UFO video, it's probably real, but it's not actually aliens. It's just our government who's created stuff that basically nobody's privy to. And that like it's like super deep to where it's like, yeah, they did make contact, but what you see isn't even the contact with them. You just see what they have. You just see what the government has.
Yeah, I just choose to believe both everything and nothing that I hear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, yes.
Could be.
Yes.
Could be.
Like, this is what I'd say. I like to entertain the thoughts. Like, I'm not going to completely discredit it.
Yeah. But
I'm also not going to live my life by it.
It is still informing our expectations and our worldview. You know what I mean? In a certain way, just like we were talking about, like with the entrainment or the way that, we program our minds and stuff. So I do try to, honestly, I try to hear as little news or little information about what's going on outside of my particular moment. Unless it's something that pertains to, I know that sounds super selfish, but it's honestly, it's a boundary. It's a self-care boundary for real, because like, otherwise, like you said, we just get overwhelmed by the endless information and endless versions of reality that are out there.
How much stuff that you hear on the news is something that directly affects you or can you directly affect?
Exactly.
At least at a macro level.
Yeah, so little of it.
So, in the end, it's usually just something that gets you hyped up, or like
hyped with cortisol, or stressed,
depressed, or
stressed and depressed. Yeah,
because it's not unless the only news you watch is CBS Sunday Morning, which is only feel good news. All you get is feel bad news, except for the last story every day is the cute little kitten, or whatever the disabled person that's overcome these great odds, or
which is almost like a slap in the face at that point. That they weaponized all of this bad news.
They just freaking shoved your face in the dirt for 49 minutes for the last 5.
Yeah.
Have your sweet story.
Oh, that's awful.
Just to send you to bed with a little bit better.
The sugar-coated
shit.
Literally, yeah.
Here's your turd. Have some sugar on it, and
that's the American
makes
way.
the pill go down a little bit easier. But at the same point, though, I mean, there's sometimes that maybe it's not something that you can affect, but having that awareness go out to so many people can make enough people mad at the same time. That, I mean, it could be used nefariously, but it could also be used for a good thing.
Yeah. It's like the 100th monkey phenomenon. I feel like that's something you've been sort of circling back to throughout this conversation. It's just like you reach a critical mass. Like when so many people are aware of this one thing, it becomes more of a collective reality.
Yeah, it's like, hey guys, like what the fuck?
Yeah. Or
why
whatever,
is this
or
still
whatever
happening?
it may be, or innovative ideas.
Yeah.
You ever hear about that? Like when
we need to use
like
that.
like ideas come to people at the same time, or when that information's like in the collective psyche. It's just the more people that know it, the more people know it subconsciously. So I like to end episodes with a little highlight of any thing that just stood out to you about the conversation, or anything that you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to say, that you wanted to bridge any idea or whatnot.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like a lot of our conversations always have similar themes every time. It always comes back to like we talk about like the fabric of kind of what we are experiencing or whatever.
Fabric of existence.
Yeah, it comes down to like what the fuck is going on. Yeah. Like what's going on here? Like
But like to talk about all the flavors of not knowing.
And I think something that's nice about it, having those conversations kind of is a humbling thing, because it brings you back to some of the mysticism, the wonder, the maybe like try to appreciate this opportunity to experience in the end, because like we don't really understand what's going on. We're all just experiencing and trying to figure out what's going on, like, or maybe we're not even trying to figure out what's going on. We're just like puttering around, but it seems like we are.
I think that's the critical mass that we're reaching, is that more people are
trying to figure out what's going on.
Reaching that singularity for sure.
So I mean, I always appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's the mirror that we bring to each other.
Yeah.
Surrender and hold infinite